Macron calls for Europe to not be caught in the conflict in Taiwan. He said, because the question Europeans need to answer, is it in our interest to accelerate on Taiwan? No. So is it in our interest to ramp up the war in Ukraine? I mean, by the way, this is the Macron and the France that invade Mali and Niger just recently because they need their uranium from Niger because they have more nuclear plants in France than anywhere else. Oh, we could go there, but we shouldn't be involved in Taiwan. And the only reason he's saying this, by the way, is the bottom line, because they got to do business with China, because the Chinese got 1.4 billion people, and it's the fastest growing economy in the world.
You know, he's an example of a stopped clock being right twice a day. He happens to be right on this. And that quote you have, I think there's a following line where he says, we will not be seduced by the American rhythm, meaning Americans like to fight wars, and the Chinese overreaction. I mean, that has caused quite a disturbance in Europe. I applaud him for saying that, even though I can't applaud much else of what he does.
Oh, yeah, he's a little arrogant boy. Here it is. Is it in our interest to accelerate on the subject of Taiwan? No. The worst thing would be to think that we Europeans must become followers on this topic and adapt to the American rhythm and Chinese overreaction. He also warned of a trap for Europe if it got caught up in this crisis that is not ours.
That is a damning and very poignant phrase that I have not heard before, referring to American imperialism as a rhythm, something we do over and over again. You know this. I know this. The people watching us now know this. The people that read the Trends Journal know this. The people that watch Judging Freedom know this. But I've not heard a Western leader refer to the American pattern of imperialism as an American rhythm. And again, I disagree with President Macron on many things, but we have to be intellectually honest. On this, he is correct. He is 100%. Called out the U.S.
And this is like from the Financial Times. Macron's Taiwan stance provokes outcry.
Yeah.
Diplomats and lawmakers in the U.S. and Central and Eastern Europe attacked Macron for being soft on Beijing and critical of the U.S., especially given that it has backed Europe dealing with the fallout from Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So attacked Macron. And again, it's not any of our business.
I'm thinking.
By the way, what they call people like ourselves that don't want to become involved in these foreign entanglements because they're no threat to America, they call us isolationists.
I don't care what they call us. As far as I'm concerned,
the stupidity of it.
We are following one of the greatest speeches in American history, which is George Washington's farewell address, warning against foreign entanglements, which, for the most part, until Teddy Roosevelt came along, the American government followed.
Well, you forgot Woodrow Wilson.
Yeah. Well, Teddy preceding Wilson.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant FDR. You're right. Teddy Roosevelt. Yeah.
Wilson, of course, doing far more damage with World War I and all the other stuff.
Yeah, I was thinking FDR. Yeah, Teddy Roosevelt, the invasion of Cuba, and we still got Guantanamo over there, right?
Right. It's a lease. When does that lease expire? Who do we send our lease payments to? I mean, it's a farce. Just stole the property. 40,000 square miles. That thing is half the size of New Jersey.
There's another article that came out, and public support among the United States voters is ebbing for the Ukraine war. They say it's fallen from 60% last May to 48%. And this is an Associated Press NORC Center for Public Affairs Research. So the reason, of course, people are tired of it, and people living paycheck to paycheck, and they don't want our money going to Ukraine war. So what do you think, again, what do you think is going to happen with this? The Americans going to keep ramping up the war? Or the war going to come to an end?
Joe Biden and Tony Blinken and Lloyd Austin have not given themselves an off-ramp. So I don't know how this will end from American involvement. I think the war will end when Putin says, okay, we've chased you out of eastern Ukraine, where all the Russian-speaking people are. This is all we want to do. We're going to stop. Zelensky said last week that they won't stop, again, nonsense, until the Ukrainian flag flies over Crimea. I assume he's saying that just for domestic political reasons. He can't possibly believe that to be so. So at some point, they'll just stop fighting, even though the Americans don't want them to do it. How Biden gets out of this, I don't know. But I do believe, just my gut, Gerald, that the president, Joe Biden, wants to run for re-election as a wartime president. So I don't think this is going to stop before 2024. His heroes are Abraham Lincoln and FDR, and he wants to emulate them by running as a wartime president. This is his war. He ought to look at what happened to Lyndon Johnson in 1968. Afraid to run for re-election, and rightly so, because the Vietnam War had become so unpopular. But he and his people seem to think they can pull this off. And they've been in this business for a long time. When Colin Powell was lying at the UN about weapons of mass destruction, when George W. Bush was throwing Phil Giraldi out of the Oval Office because Phil, as the CIA briefer, told the president there are no weapons of mass destruction. The chief of staff of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and the chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee were beating the drums for war. Who were they? Well, the chief of staff then is now the Secretary of State, and the chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee then is now the President of the United States. This pattern doesn't change, Gerald.
No, Blinken and Biden, they're B and B, right? Yeah. Blinken and Biden, there's not a war that they didn't love, not a war that they didn't support. And again, these are the guys, the tough-talking guys that they don't go fight. No, they just send others to go do the dirty work. And again, anybody that wants to support a war, put on your military drag, get your gun, go over there and fight, or shut your mouth. That's the way I look at it. And again, as you said, in Ukraine, they're taking people our age and young boys to go fight. So they're in, they could go lead the charge or shut your mouth. Anybody that wants to support war, go fight it. That's the way I look at it. Judge, this article that you've written, again, it's so powerful, and everybody should really go to Judging Freedom. And of course, you're going to have on again Colonel Douglas McGregor talking about the Ukraine war and where it's going.
So I have Scott Ritter, a dear friend of yours and mine, one of the most courageous people in America and one of the most brilliant on military and intelligence matters, today at 11 Eastern. At 3 Eastern, I have a man the Judging Freedom audience loves to hate, former CIA senior official, 40 years in the CIA, Jack Devine, who starting to acknowledge that the Russians are moving westward and can't be stopped. And then tomorrow at 4:00 in the afternoon Eastern,
wow,
the great Colonel McGregor himself.
Wow. Well, thank you for all that you're doing. Listen, everybody listen to what this man is doing and what we're doing to try to give people the best that we can to bring life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness back to what used to be called the United States of America. Now it's the USSA, the United Soviet States of America. And by the way, everyone, May 27th, up here in Kingston, New York, on the Four Corners of Freedom, we're going to have another Peace and Freedom rally. It's going to be called Make America Healthy Again in every way that we can. And Judge Napolitano is going to be a speaker, Gary Null, John Whitehead, and others. And we're going to do everything we can to restore the American spirit that has been stolen away from us. And it's time to do it because most people are fed up with the establishment system anyway. And we need to build the path back to what it used to be. And Judge Napolitano is doing everything he can to do it. Judge, thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Gerald. Always a pleasure. Until next Wednesday, my friend.
Ciao, ciao.